My name is Kevin Mullins. I'm a playwright and theater artist in Boston, and my play is A Southern Victory, which is a trilogy of alternative history plays. A Southern Victory takes place in 1923, but in a world where the South has won the American Civil War. And so you have sort of two countries with a militarized border, and the play follows the main character of Thomas Williams, who's a young man from a rich planting family in Atlanta who goes to Harvard as an international student. And while at Harvard, he slowly gets sucked into the radical underground of the abolitionist movement and sort of begins to question everything that he felt he knew. So the fringe element of the abolitionist movement has adopted the tactic of suicide bombing. So you have these young men from the North and Midwest who are going into the South and blowing themselves up on streetcars, in picture houses, at debutante balls, and it's sort of creating, this crisis atmosphere. And, throughout the play, there's sort of this idea that, war is just about to erupt, at any moment between the United States and the Confederacy. With suicide bombing, I sort of wanted to sort of merge, one of the most horrendous tactics in the modern world, like with a cause that was sort of absolutely just, which is the abolition of slavery, and sort of use that as a way for us to talk about political violence and like what violence is justifiable and what violence is not justifiable and what people would do for a cause that they truly believed in. I've always been very interested in history, and I always sort of think what sort of drew me to write this play is I think Americans have often sort of felt that we've been devoid of conflict zones, or we're not really attached to it, and I feel like if you actually look at our history, you really sort of see that we've only just been like a breath away from it happening in several different moments. And also I really felt like I wanted to sort of deal with how like us as a society really haven't really gotten over, the crime of slavery. And like how do we deal as people living in the 21st century with this great, horrendous crime that occurred, just 150 years ago. So I originally saw it as just one play, and so if you look at the first draft of the play, it actually takes place, or it starts right where the third play ends. And so I really wanted to track Thomas's journey into radicalism. And so the more that I looked at it, the more I realized we really had to go back and sort of watch his journey from the beginning. And so originally it was one play, and then I realized, no, this is actually two plays. And then, I began working on the second play. And then really as I sort of got to the end of the second play, I sort of realized, oh my God, like this is three plays. So it sort of slowly evolved into a trilogy. I would say the surprises is more just the scope of it. I feel like the more I wrote, the more I realized how big it was actually going to be. And the amount of research that it really took, I felt like there was a moment where I actually had to stop writing and sort of think about, the history of America from 1864 to 1923 and deal with, a whole range of issues from, so what happens once the Confederacy is recognized and wins the war? What happens to the abolitionist movement? What happens to the taming of the American West? What happens to American Indians? And sort of all these things, and also who winds up coming to power in the Confederacy? Who winds up coming to power in the U.S., which took a very long time. The first play was really worked and developed when I was a graduate student in the MFA Dramatic Writing program at Carnegie Mellon under Rob Handel. And I would say, he really sort of helped shape the first play to sort of be what it was. And then once I got back to Boston, I became a part of Interim Writers, which is a playwright support group in the city. And I became a member of their writers group, The Accomplice. And it was really through The Accomplice, either through bringing it into to meetings and workshops and having a workshop there, and then also Interim Writers does, writers retreats in the woods, and so I was actually really given sort of the space and time to sort of just sit and be able to work on the other two plays. And I really wouldn't have written the other two plays were it not for Interim Writers and the space and time that they gave me. It's also been developed by Vagabond Theater Group, who have been amazingly helpful in providing private readings and now public readings, and they also they also gave me a day last summer where we actually were able to read the entire thing back to back, which I think took almost 7 or 8 hours. But it was amazingly helpful to actually hear each play simultaneously, and we're looking to for it to be produced next spring, which I'm very excited about. I really want the audience to walk away from the trilogy sort of asking themselves what they would do for a cause if they thought was just, and also ask them questions about our own history involving race, involving class, involving power.